Hi, this is Tamsen Granger.
And this is Dan Abuhoff.
With Tamsen and Dan read the paper on Monday, July 22nd, I think it is.
Everything's out of kilter, but there's a good reason for it. Because we are on vacation in Block Island. We spent Sunday traveling, the great trek to Block Island. It takes days to get to Block Island, but we did it in one day. On a day that was 99 degrees. And we brought with us no lesser a personage than Sadie Abuhoff. Say hello, Sadie.
Hello.
Okay, so there you go. The podcast is saved. So we're a day late, but we're not $1 short.
So Block Island is a beautiful place. We have done the podcast from Block Island before. It's a little teensy-weensy island in between Connecticut and Long Island, right? In the Long Island Sound?
Yeah.
But it's part of Rhode Island. It's not part of Connecticut.
Right.
But yeah, it's a small island. It's a small island. You can only get there by ferry. It's a disaster getting here, but that's part of the charm, because once you're here, you feel like you're on a different planet.
It's so hard to get here.
Yeah.
Some members of the family are not showing up this year.
Oh, let's not single anybody out. That's Zeke. We're talking about you.
I mean, let's throw everyone under the bus. There's some people who could have gotten here earlier than they're getting here, too.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
No. We're not criticizing. The point is, when we are on Block Island, we feel as if we are in a different world. And you know why? It's because we're in a different world. It's
right.
It has its own rules, its own behavior, its own weather, and its own prices.
And when we first came to Block Island, we stayed on a side of the island where you couldn't really see the mainland. You can actually see the mainland from a lot of the island.
Yeah.
But those first few years, we just thought we were, in the middle of the ocean.
Well, we kind of are.
We had no idea.
We're not in the middle, but
No.
we're on an island in the ocean, and it feels that way. But that's part of the charm.
The other part of the charm is there's nothing here.
Well, not a lot of the
There's
normal
there's not a lot of
frou-frou
attractions.
of everyday life.
Yeah.
Not a lot of fancy restaurants, not a lot of theater attractions, no theater, not much.
No cell service, that's for sure.
Yes, I know. Very little in the way of cell service.
So it's really an opportunity to get away from it all. It is spectacular.
We're cut off.
It's beautiful.
And yet, we find that we are encountering a scandal in Block Island.
A big scandal.
That's right.
So the house we're renting this year is in a part of the island near one local attraction called Painted Rock.
This is an attraction in Block Island.
And it's a rock that's in the middle of the road, and people paint it. People paint it frequently.
Like Happy Birthday So-and-so or Happy
It's a big rock.
Anniversary.
It's a big rock.
Go Michigan,
Or
whatever.
Will You Marry Me?
I haven't seen that one.
Apparently this whole thing started about 50 years ago.
Yeah.
In the 60s as a prank.
And it gets painted like 2 or 3 times a day. Isn't that right, Sadie?
Yes, I've seen 3 different designs today.
Yeah, it's crazy. But everyone knows about it. And everyone does it.
Recently, someone posted on social media some chips of painted rock in his hot little hands.
So we chipped off a piece of the rock.
Right.
Oh, God.
Well, not the rock, probably the paint.
Well, yeah, most of it's paint at this point.
Whatever it is.
But anyway, it's destruction of a national monument.
It's a piece of the heart of the island.
But here's my issue.
Yes.
There are no rules when it comes to painted rock. There's no one saying when you paint it, you have to let that be for 12 hours or whatever. You could paint it Happy Birthday So-and-so, and by the time you drive by with that person, it's painted a different design.
I understand.
Sadie, the tradition is to add to it, but...
I know, but like the tradition is very laissez-faire, and then all of a sudden we're uptight and calling people out.
If everyone takes a souvenir of painted rock, there's going to be no painted rock. Do people go by and chip off pieces of Mount Rushmore?
It's like
I'm
selling,
sure people do.
It's like stealing pieces of the moon that NASA collected and putting it on eBay and selling it. It's the same exact thing. It's scandalous.
Well, technically, you're taking man-made stuff back. I mean, I don't think they're taking any pieces of the rock. I think they're taking pieces of paint.
No, it's a destruction of a local landmark, and
It's in the wrong spirit.
Anyway, social media erupted, and
social media has spoken.
But I have to say, there was recently an editorial in the local Block Island Times.
Oh, there you go.
By the editor, Lars Trodson. And he seemed to think this is too much vitriol.
Well, the point of Block Island is to relax and let people do what they want to do, have vacation. We're spending all week, driving on these narrow roads with people biking like 3 people abreast. And we just have to keep saying to ourselves, everyone's on vacation. Let's all be nice to each other. We're not going to have a temper about this. So I get that, I get the concept of let's dial it back.
Lars Troutsen is the name of the editor of the Block Island Times.
Yeah, how do you not know that? You've been reading it for years,
All
dear.
right. So now you're getting an intergenerational reaction to this. I think it's a bigger issue than I think Sadie has appreciated, but perhaps it'll calm down. And Laura's apparently seeing it the way Sadie sees it. So,
Regardless, we had a wonderful afternoon at the beach.
Yeah, nice day today. We're all relaxed now. And
you can tell just how relaxed we
we
are.
are very relaxed. Okay, so back on the mainland, we'll have more next week. Next week will be a very largely Block Island podcast, but since we've only been here one day, we have mainland concerns. Jack Viertel, the guy who runs Encores, he's the artistic director. Encores is the series that we go to, Tamsen and I go to, that does 3 classic musicals a year. Number one, they're not really classic musicals. They're musicals which would not merit a full revival, but they are good enough to be done in a concert performance. And number 2, they're not performances, they're concert performances. So they're a little short of a full production, and they just do them for a weekend. But it's usually great. It's often great. And Jack's been running it for 20 years. And we like Jack. I like Jack. Jack wrote a book called The Secret Life of the American Musical, which I've been reading. It's a fantastic book. And because he teaches a course, I think it's at Columbia, or maybe NYU, about the American musical. And he really breaks down as to the form of the American musical and how you write a musical and how that form has evolved. And there's some real standard steps in terms of what the first song is supposed to be about, what the second song is supposed to be about. So he knows what he's talking about. But in any event, he is leaving because he's going to be a consultant. He thinks it's time. 20 years is long enough. They need a younger person. He does reflect a little bit on what's been successful and what's not. He doesn't want to call things out. I don't know if it's worth naming the shows that he thinks are successful. The truth of the matter is, I don't know how to say this, but the shows that were really great on Encores were the ones that were done before Jack got there. So, even though
is that really true?
Yeah, because the ones that went to Broadway from there when he was there, After Midnight, Gypsy, The Apple Tree, and Finian's Rainbow, as opposed to, let's say, Chicago and Wonderful Town, which were both much better, which before he was there.
But the Gypsy production was good.
It was good. It was good, but you can't miss with Gypsy. That's a casting thing. You got Patti LuPone to do Gypsy. He's all set. And his favorite moments are things that they were okay. He mentioned Follies. I saw that. You didn't, Tamsen. It actually was excellent. Most Happy Fellow. Do you remember their production of The Most Happy Fellow?
No.
Yeah, I don't either. But we saw a full production before. It was great. Bird, It's a Plain Superman. That was only okay. He thought 76 was great. It wasn't great. So
it was awful. But here's the thing.
What
that I got from the article.
Yeah.
Because we've been going to these productions for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I don't remember a lot of them.
Oh, no. If you look it up, you're really reminded. It's hard to remember. But I do remember the truth is, no, first of all, I think Jack Viertel's great. I think what happens is in something like this, when you say, okay, what are the ones that we can produce that are great musicals? Well, something short of great musicals won't be revived, but they're fantastic properties. And you take the low-hanging fruit, and that's what they took in the first few years before he got there. So the best candidates, Wonderful Town's a great candidate, Chicago's a hidden gem. Those were gone by the time he got there. And he's coming up with the second level of that kind of stuff.
But we've had some magical evenings.
Oh, absolutely.
With seeing performances of musicals that don't really merit trying to go to Broadway.
That's absolutely right.
But in the moment, especially with the performers are usually top-notch.
Right.
Even if they are not yet, what do you call it? Not name brands.
Look, we saw
household names.
We saw Kristen Chenoweth there before she was Kristen Chenoweth. We saw Sutton
Lin-Manuel Miranda, etc.
We saw Sutton Foster before she was Sutton Foster. I mean, you see people on the rise who are really tremendously talented.
But not everything needs to be a Broadway.
No, look, it's a fantastic series. Viertel's fantastic, and he's moving on.
So what was that book?
The Secret Life of the American Musical. Okay. It's really fantastic. Okay, Sadie.
Yes.
There's an article about working out.
Speaking of music.
And speaking of working out, Sadie Abuhoff's name comes up.
Yes, I just worked out today.
And the Times says they've done a scientific study to prove, guess what? Music enhances the quality of your workout.
Knock me over with a feather. I am so surprised.
It's a headline in the New York Times. It's a headline.
They're really cracking this case wide open. Well, they're basically saying they put people in a study and had them work out with music and then work out with no music.
Yeah.
And then work out with a podcast.
Yeah.
And guess what? The music, they were the most like happy and had the best workout.
Really?
How did they measure the quality of the workout?
I
mean, did they do
unclear.
that like physically?
think it was a little bit of that and a little bit of people taking like a survey afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, but-
I mean,
It was like
obviously, it's
heart rates, power outputs.
okay. Good. So it's clear that it's more fun to work out with music.
It gets you going. Right?
I guess part of the survey is trying to figure out whether it's actually more productive, more
Well, they
efficient.
say people are prone to what they call entrainment, which is they start working out to the beat of the music.
Yeah.
So if there's no beat to the podcast, maybe you guys should like insert like a little beat behind your podcast.
But let's be clear. When they had them listen to a podcast while they were working out, it wasn't the Tamsen and Dan podcast.
Who's to say?
But we do have loyal listeners who keep up with us while they're working out.
That is true. That is
Well,
true.
I do know
And so-
people.
I hope this doesn't blow it
This
for us.
explains Mark Snyder's lack of top-notch physicality at the moment. He's
Why don't
been
you just
listening
call
to
people
us.
out, Mom?
There you go.
Why don't you just
Oh,
call people
did
out?
I name names?
Oh, God.
Well, I do know people who are distance runners and they'll listen to podcasts while they run because, at that point, how many times do you want to hear certain songs? You want to listen to new material.
Also, you have to pace yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I listen to music every time I work out. I actually was driving to the gym on Saturday and I turned the car all the way around because I forgot my iPod. So,
All the way around.
all the way around.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree.
Okay.
That's the bottom line. I agree.
All right. Tamsen.
So, I'll tell you one thing about the Northeast.
Yes.
It's been H-O-T,
Yeah.
but it's also been super W-E-T.
Yeah.
It's been wet. And we have water in places we never expected to have water. Also, we have beautiful, it looks like a jungle everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And usually it can pretty much look like it's a desert in a lot of Julys in, New Jersey, etc. So anyway, particularly in New York City, in Riverside Park, flooding has been an issue. And Riverside Park is a wonderful park that snakes along the west side, along Riverside Drive, which is a wonderful sort of boulevard with, elegant and formerly elegant, not hotels, apartment buildings. And this park was actually designed by your friend and mine, Frederick Law Olmsted, in the 1890s. And, it's quite wonderful. And it's been modified over the years with playgrounds and sports areas, etc. I mean, we used to live near 100th Street. We used to jog from 100th Street near Riverside Park. We could go all the way up to the GW Bridge.
We did that at Riverside Park?
Drive. Yeah.
When I was at Columbia, I used to ride at Riverside Park.
So it's a wonderful park, but it's been flooding. And it's been, one of the problems with its flooding is it's actually compromising a 3-mile long tunnel underneath the park that Amtrak runs through. Mm-hmm. And people say that, with the water over top of that tunnel, it's been getting heavier and, may not hold up against all this flooding. So there's a lot of discussion of what to do. Also, there are grand stairways that become waterfalls because apparently the drainage system hasn't been updated since the 1930s. Mm-hmm. And things need to be improved. However, there are some people who feel that perhaps the park should just adapt and let it evolve into a new sort of ecology. That various birds have started to be attracted to these wetlands. New wetland plants have begun to grow up in what are now swamps. You will see people ice skating in little ponds that have developed in various places. So, some people are calling for a more natural approach rather than just trying to strip it all back to
And those
what
people,
it was.
they're not worried about the Amtrak tunnels, those folks.
Not everybody thinks that the Amtrak tunnels are truly compromised. Now, so, it's an interesting discussion in my mind, but that might be kind of fun to just let nature take more of a course there.
All right. Well, I have no insight into the Amtrak, but
I feel like that's not an opinion thing. It's really like a fact thing.
yes, yeah. Well, hopefully someone will figure it out. But it strikes me as funny that water would. I mean, you build it. You're something in a tunnel. You got plenty of dirt on top of you. You don't think the water would be a problem?
Who knew? Who knew?
It's kind of, it dips, right? So
Yeah.
it fills up with water.
Yeah, okay.
The surface above.
Look,
Think of it like a big sponge. And then when a sponge fills up with water, it gets heavy. And then it sits on a tunnel.
Did this metaphor?
Did they
was
use
that in
that
the
metaphor in the
Was that in the
article?
Was the word sponge in the article?
No.
Okay, too bad. All right, baseball. Just quickly, we have solved the big problem. Here's the biggest problem in baseball right now.
The Mets?
No. It is that people say what you have is three things. Number one, you have too many home runs. Number two, you have too many strikeouts.
Wait a minute, who says this?
Everybody pays attention to baseball.
I've never
You
said
just
that
walk
in my
down the
life.
street, everyone's saying
There's
it.
there's an article in the Wall
Is
Street
this like
Journal
the old
this week.
cranky guys? It's,
First of
baseball
all,
is not what it used to be?
The only people talk about baseball are old cranky guys. I thought we can narrow that down.
Okay.
All right. An article in the Wall Street Journal this week that says there are too many home runs. They're meaningless, but that's not a voice in the wilderness. There's an article in the Times this week that says there are too many strikeouts. And number three is you have the games are too long. Everyone says that. Even you two believe that the games are too long. I don't have to venture out of this room to get that. I was at Fenway this week. I was at a Boston Red Sox game. We were in the seventh inning. It was 3 hours and 15 minutes into the game. There is no reason it takes 3 hours, 15 minutes to play
But
seven
if there are
innings.
too many strikeouts,
Right?
don't strikeouts make it shorter?
Exactly. That's the mystery. That's the Sherlock Holmes moment. How is it that there are so many strikeouts and the only way people score is at home runs? The games are too long. It doesn't make any sense. It should take longer if there were fewer strikeouts. And here's the reason. It's finally been figured out. The Times, by accident.
Is it the kiss cam? Is that what does it?
No, but that's a good guess. Justin Verlander, your favorite pitcher, explained what's going on. He said it used to be when he fell behind a count 2-0 on a batter, particularly a good hitter, he said, you know something? I'll just throw him a ball. It's in the zone. I know there's a good chance he's going to hit it because he's looking for a fastball. I got to throw him a fastball, and I'll live with that. Doesn't have to be a great pitch because he'll hit a single. Big deal. Next batter. But now any time a batter hits a ball, it could be a home run. The ball's so juiced, you hit anything, it's a home run. So now he says, I can't do that anymore. I have to throw pitches on the edge. I can't throw strikes. I'm afraid to throw strikes. So every count, instead of being 1 pitch, 2 pitch, the guy hits it. We'll see where it goes. I got 8 fielders. It's, I got a pitch on the edge. I got to throw a pitch that looks like a strike. It's not a strike. And it's 8, 9, 10 pitches. And that's why the game is too long. Because there are too many home runs, the pitchers feel they have to strike everybody out. So you have too many home runs and a lot of strikeouts. But what does it result in? A lot of pitches. And that's why the game is too long. Okay? It's problem solved. I see. See, I did.
Yeah. I don't really know about that.
That was for old cranky guys.
Well, this is what I will say.
Yes.
In most modifications to sports,
Yes.
the goal is to make people score more and make the game faster.
Right. You're right.
So I think we're getting the score more. We're not getting to make the game faster.
Okay. But if you did this, if you believe it, it's counterintuitive. But if you made the ball less juiced and you had fewer home runs, then it would be faster because the pitchers would throw strikes. The batters would get more hits because the ball would be in the zone. They just wouldn't be home runs, so they would score, and the game would actually take less time.
What kind of juice is in the ball?
It's not juice. It's the balls. It's wound very tight, and the grips, the
Stitches?
the stitches are not as prominent as they used to be. They're sort of firm against the ball, which makes the ball more
Is
aerodynamic.
that also advantageous to the pitcher or
No,
only the hitter?
it's not. As some pitchers have mentioned, it's like throwing an ice cube. So some pictures can't adjust. All right. I
So
don't want
that's
to
a
dwell on
story
this.
for another day, I think.
It is. We're going to go back to the story again
We'll
and
go
again.
back to how baseballs change over time.
There's a lot of interest in this room on that, so I can only believe our listeners are interested also. So, Tamsen, the lobby article.
Yeah, lobby art.
Lobby art.
The article in the New York Times, I think it's a little bit self-serving. I think it's meant, they're kind of celebrating the New York Times archival photographs.
Yes, well.
And so they wrote an article about great lobby art.
Yes.
That exists when, big commercial institutions buy fantastic things and put them up in their lobby to, I don't know what,
Impress people.
Impress people,
Yes.
Perhaps encourage the morale of their
Make
employees,
it feel less sparse
whatever.
and scary.
Yes. And they mentioned a fantastic Olmec head that was in the Seagram's building
Well, don't they have the
for
Rockefeller?
years, and then it went other places, etc. Yeah.
They have the Rockefeller Center stuff, which is always impressive.
Right. Yeah. So the question is, what does it really do? One of the funny things is sometimes businesses invest in art and then it appreciates
Yes.
hugely.
Right.
Okay. So in some cases, you have works of art that they bought for like $5,000 may now be worth $5 million.
Right.
And then they say, well, to hell with impressing people and improving morale. We got to sell this baby and do something else with the funds.
I think our organization, my firm, is in that category. I think we
Really, they've made some good investments, and now they say we better
Well, yes, just to put a finer point on it.
liquidate them.
No, they haven't gotten to that. But everyone always says, "Oh, yeah, we bought a lot of stuff. It wasn't worth a lot then, but now it's worth a lot." I will make two other observations. It impresses nobody. It does nothing for anybody. So then the question is, would we ever monetize it? I think that would almost be too complicated and difficult a decision for the partnership to make. But maybe when times are tough, who knows? But that happens.
So you say it impresses nobody. This is a result of a survey you have taken?
I speak for myself as a representative of the way most people think.
It's the
That's
cranky
what I
old
think
man
of you.
opinion.
That's what I think of you when I think of, the way most people think. I was like, well, he's a common man.
That's right. I'm a regular guy, In any event, but some people take it quite seriously, and apparently we've been successful.
So really, if there's any lobby art you like, appreciate it now, because who knows?
Who knows?
Well, is that the worst thing in the world, to get different art in your lobby?
No, it's not. It's not. There are people who have a business that
No,
does
but
lobby art.
it's just kind of mean. It's okay, staff. This is too good for you now.
But the iconic pieces.
Let's get something cheaper.
It's
for
not
you
like
to
they're looking
enjoy.
at the Mona Lisa every day. It's usually just like some really moderny, like blocks of something with smears of paint through it.
It's also the kind of stuff
lots of
you
times-
can't sell the stuff in Rockefeller Center. I mean, there's stuff that's so huge and so iconic. It's not like someone can buy it.
Well,
and put
you're
it in their
talking
living
about
room.
like foyer. You're talking about like.
Lobby art. That's
frescoes,
Yeah.
etc.
I feel like that's the
Sculptures.
stuff out in the courtyard.
Yeah, outdoor art. Well, it's part of it, but not all the stuff in Rockefeller Center is out in the courtyard.
Well, I have the pleasure of working in a federal office space most days of the week, and there are just a lot of pictures of the U.S. Capitol, really.
Really?
So I don't think there's a lot of the U.S. Capitol, some of the Washington Monument, and a little bit of Lincoln.
Yeah.
So
Lincoln Man or the Lincoln Memorial?
So this
Memorial,
is the thing.
just Memorial.
If the government had been a little more savvy about its lobby art,
We'd be all set.
we'd be all set.
Exactly.
The deficit would be nowhere near where it is now.
Well, maybe they're buying lobby
I think
art
that's
now.
when you're told to walk over to the mall and look at the Smithsonian,
Yeah.
There's a whole lobby for that stuff at the Smithsonian, I'm sure.
Yes. All right. So, Sadie, blow the lid off your next story. Bachelorette expenses.
Again, I think we have a lot of stories here today that are like, oh yeah, duh. So there's an article about bachelorette parties are expensive.
Yeah. What?
For everyone involved, and they're often putting people in debt. Not often, maybe, but they put people in debt because you have these people who are getting married in their 20s, and a lot of people aren't making their their highest paychecks in their 20s. So they're going into literal debt to go on these, long weekend vacations to different countries, different states, what have you. And
I've actually heard parents talking about their daughters are reluctant to get invited to one more wedding.
right.
Because by the time you have all the wedding expenses, especially if you're in the wedding and
It's
do the
thousands of
bachelorette
dollars.
stuff,
It's thousands of dollars.
it's a huge investment. But everybody kind of agrees to it because I'm
You
doing
get-
it now. You're going to do it.
No,
for
you
me.
get peer pressured into it.
Yeah.
And they say that it's a keeping up with the Joneses thing. People see pictures of other people's. It's a social media issue because they see it all on social media and they want to keep up with everyone. And the problem is before social media, everyone was just keeping up with the people within their friend circle or within their town. And now they're trying to literally keep up with the Kardashians and trying to,
Right.
throw epic parties that are rivaling the celebrities in some regards.
So what's the solution?
What's the advice of the New York Times?
The advice is that you have to have a very frank conversation with your friend getting married and say, hey, this is what's going to fit within my budget and this is what will not fit within my budget.
That's not going to happen.
And if you have to drop out of the wedding, you have to drop out of the wedding. And it does talk about how people drop out of weddings regularly now because of
really?
the expenses
Okay,
required.
well that's good.
I mean, it's good in the sense that they're being responsible. It's bad in the sense that they're feeling this obligation to pay so much money to be friends with someone.
Yeah. Well,
And I have heard the age-old line, oh, I'm going to do this for your wedding when you get married. And I hate that line because it's like, what if I don't have a bachelorette party? What if we're not friends in 10 years when I get married? That's BS. You can put that in the grouping of you're going to wear this dress again. Another BS line. No, I'm going to spend $300 on this dress and it's going to go down the drain.
But you have to admit, you cannot say to somebody, oh, thank you, that's not going to happen.
yeah.
And I don't want to wear a fancy dress.
Well, it's not even a fancy dress, but if you're in the wedding, those dresses,
It's
you
required.
never wear
You have
them
to-
again.
I know, but then you can't complain. It's part of the deal.
Well,
No one's ever going to be honest
I
about
mean,
that.
I've heard a lot of complaints. That's where all
But
of
not
the
to the bride, not to the bride.
you'd be surprised.
You just nod and smile and say,
No.
okay, I'll wear
Sadie's
it.
telling you the opposite.
No, you have difficult conversations with a lot of people. It doesn't always result in. It often results in everyone just getting on board, but there are fights in the meantime.
I have worn some super ugly dresses.
Mom,
I think we have more recent evidence.
we just talked about how this is a recent experience of spending a ton of money on weddings. That wasn't. I mean, you said before that weddings in your day were a party at the church and that's it.
Right. But still, I mean, the whole dress thing still existed, and we all just nod and smile with the
but this-
fantasy
but-
that
but-
these
Yes, but
dresses
this
can
is
be
much more
used
expensive
again.
then.
But
Yeah, this is
now
much
it's
more
$300 for the dress.
Yeah.
It's if you're paying for hair and makeup on the day, it's probably $100 for that. You're pitching in for the Bachelorette weekend, which is whatever the budget is for that could be $500.
Isn't
paying
that often,
for your-
Isn't that often a destination thing? The
It
Bachelorette?
depends. It depends on your group of friends.
Yeah.
You're paying for your stay at the hotel. This woman was saying she was in a wedding party, did not get a +1, and the bride told her to stay at the hotel the day before the wedding and the day of the wedding. And since she didn't have a +1, she wasn't splitting the cost of the room with anyone. So she said, no, I can only do one night. And so the bride said, you should do Friday night because we're having a bridesmaid thing on Friday night. So her recommendation was to drive all the way home directly after the wedding on Saturday instead of staying overnight on Saturday. Just
right,
making
so
it
it-
super inconvenient.
This is telling me it's just a difficult subject.
It is a very difficult subject, and I think the takeaway is what confuses me about it is people are getting less and less specific about what defines a relationship, and yet more and more specific about the components of a wedding. We have to have these 10,000 things to get married, but let's redefine what a relationship means. Why don't we, if we're going to redefine all of that stuff, let's redefine what a wedding is and maybe get rid of it.
All right, this is too complicated for me.
No,
I'm
no.
on vacation.
Well, I would just say, I think that's a pretty good observation, Sadie, but we can move on. But I think that's an interesting comparison. I like that. Okay, Tamsen.
Popular but not very effective. Not talking about you, Dan.
I knew that from the first part of it.
Yes,
Yes.
it's the popular that threw him off.
This from the New York Times. Cardiovascular supplements and diets do little for hearts. Okay, so there's all this stuff that people are, take with the goal of improving their cardiovascular health. And some recent studies were done, and it turns out almost none of them work. Some of them actually do harm. Okay, folic acid, reduced salt diets, omega-3 fatty acids might be a little bit helpful, but things like taking calcium with vitamin D actually increases the risk of stroke, possibly increasing blood clotting and hardening of the arteries. Okay, also other supplements that showed no evidence of cardiovascular protection were vitamins A, B, C, D, E, beta-carotene, calcium, iron, antioxidants, multivitamins. Okay,
So
nothing works. And in fact, some things will do harm. They say, there's, some indication of a particular omega-3 fatty acid supplement that might help a little bit. But really what it comes down to, and that's been most successful in places where people eat no seafood.
Right.
Really, it's not found to move the needle very much in an area where people are incorporating fish into their diet on a fairly regular basis. Another interesting thing, they looked at diets, actual diets, and one of the diets that is not, let me just read exactly what it says. Randomized trials show that lower fat diets show no evidence that eating less fat, including saturated fat, had an impact on mortality or cardiovascular outcomes. So this has been, health authorities have been recommending these things for decades, low-fat diets, but federal government dietary guidelines still encourage people to limit their intake of foods rich in saturated fats, even though these have fallen out of favor with actual, the actual health authorities on this.
Look, nobody knows what to do, honestly.
Also, the highly touted Mediterranean diet, with its abundance of whole grains, beans, nuts, fruits, vegetables, and olive oil, also, most of those studies that said it would be good for you have been found to be flawed, and at best, it's not harmful. It might do you a little good, but probably not that much. The thing I found most interesting is it's not clear that low salt diets do that.
They were
much for you.
equivocal about that. They said it depends on the person, right?
Low salt diets reduced mortality from all causes only in people with normal blood pressure.
Right.
Among people with hypertension, lowering salt intake reduced deaths from heart disease, but nothing else.
Right.
And what they seem to say is that salt affects people in a very individual, specific way. Some people can tolerate a lot of salt, and some people cannot. Anyway, I think that's interesting, especially about the low fat. They are still, I'm getting recommendations from all my doctors to incorporate low-fat diet, and really it's been scientifically disproved years ago.
Right. Well, doctors are not always current. They're just going to be give you the most cautious advice.
That's a little depressing.
Well, do you take any of those supplements right now?
I do not take supplements. I really, also for many years they've been saying supplements don't work. The best way to get the benefits of those vitamins, minerals, etc., is to eat the foods they are found in.
What they always say, Sadie, is that people who take supplements have expensive urine.
Yes, so mine is top of the line, I think, because I take vitamin D, vitamin B, iron, biotin, and a multivitamin.
Well, I don't know.
And to be honest, I get my blood work done regularly, and they said that my levels have improved on many of those things.
Okay. I don't know what to say. It's hard to know.
Point, counterpoint.
Yes, point, counterpoint. Yes, all right. Let me go to the final story. The final story is called "The Classic Beetle Goes Electric." So there's a car article in the Wall Street Journal. Now, normally Dan Neal...
I have this vision of Ringo Starr being electrocuted or something. That's not the kind of beetle you're talking about,
Classic Beetle
right?
Goes Electric. That's good. That's the way you think. That's weird. So Dan Neal writes the car article. This is not by Dan Neal. It's by a guy named A.J. Baim, and he's just a normal guy. And he
writing about a VW Beetle.
In 1966, he bought it. 1967, he learned to drive. He said a VW Beetle was the coolest car you could own in California in 1967, and he felt the vibe, and he was very excited about having that car. He kept it over the years, and obviously it diminished, and I don't even know if it ran anymore. And he had it in his head that maybe he could restore it, in particular by making an electric vehicle. And he found someone who could do it for $25,000, but he said, that's a lot of money to me. I can't see doing it. And then he had what he described as a cardiac event, and he was lying in the hospital in 2017, and he said, you know something, if not now, when? I've got the money. And he handed it over to this group, EV4U Custom Conversions in Redding, California. He said the toughest thing was giving his car to them because he's giving his best friend to a complete stranger. It was $27,000, and he says it's the best decision he ever made. He says, when I first bought this car in December 1967, I used to drive it around purely for pleasure. I do the same thing now, and the feeling is similar. It's like being reintroduced to the concept of fun. And the best part is that wherever he goes, people get excited. When I take it on road trips, I pull up to a charging station next to a bunch of Teslas, and the Beetle draws a crowd. Twice I pulled into Volkswagen dealerships to charge the car, and both times the building has emptied. While the car is charging, I give people a tour of the car. So there you go. Forget the environment, forget everything else. It's fun. You take your car, your old car, you make it electric. It's turned around for A.J. Baim. Reason enough. So let's end on a positive note.
Okay.
That's
right.
the way to raise your spirits.
Is this something you're planning for the 2011 Impreza?
I hadn't thought about that. That could be the answer. It's going to take something like that.
Although that's not really a car you drive for pure pleasure.
It will
as
be.
I understand it.
It will be. Not pure. All right. So we're going to spend this week in Block Island gathering up all the Block Island news we can, and once in a while hearing something from the mainland. And we'll be back next week. I think we'll probably have a big crowd podcast next week.
Well, we'll see what we can do.
Family, extended family, all kinds of things, talking about all kinds of subjects.
Set up the mic next to Painted Rock.
Yeah, well, I'll give you the latest developments of that story. So until then, this is Dan Abuhoff.
And Tamsen Granger.
And
Sadie.
With Tamsen and Dan read the paper. See you next week.